Rain hit the awning behind the Seabrook Sheriff's Office. Neon buzzed overhead. Ryan Mercer sat cuffed to a chair, wrists raw. Animal control reversed. Rex, his German shepherd, stood in a wire crate, muzzle taped, eyes on Ryan. Sheriff Dale Hargrove leaned close, breath like stale coffee. "Sign," he said, pushing a confession across the table. "Your kid goes home, your dog walks out." A syringe cap snapped. Rex rumbled through tape. Ryan heard Katie crying outside the door. Before we find out how Ryan Mercer reached this breaking point, please subscribe and hit the bell to support our veterans. The bell over Dottie's diner rang at 8:15, the same tired jingle every Saturday. Ryan Mercer held the door while his daughter slipped inside. Outside smelled like salt and diesel from the docks. Inside, it was bacon, syrup, and coffee that always came out a little scorched. Rex stayed tight to Ryan's knee. German shepherd, black saddle, tan legs, thick coat, alert ears. His eyes were steady, watching everything without looking scared. Ryan chose the back booth like he always did. Corner seat, clear view of the entrance. People in Seabrook called it a preference. Ryan called it practice. He was 46, built from hard work and harder miles, beard trimmed close, a pale scar along his jaw. Dottie spotted them and poured his coffee before he asked. Late 60s, hair gray and pinned up, wrists strong from a lifetime of plates. "Morning, Ryan," she said. "Black, 2 sugars." "Yes, ma'am?" Katie climbed onto the booth seat and hugged her stuffed rabbit captain. One ear was shorter. She pushed the placemat puzzle flat. "Chocolate chip pancakes?" she asked. Ryan's mouth lifted at one corner. "It's Saturday, that's the rule." Rex slid under the table and lay down. No command, just routine. Ryan brushed the top of his head, a quick touch that said, "I'm here." Nights were still rough. Fireworks still turned his stomach. Rex kept him anchored. Ryan's hands looked like a carpenter's until you stared. The scars were too neat, too straight, like they came from gear and sharp edges, not splinters. He kept his hair short because long hair tugged at memories. Some nights he woke up sitting upright, lungs working like he'd run. He'd stand in the hallway with the light on, listening to the house settle. Rex would press a shoulder against his leg and breathe slow. When Ryan matched that rhythm, the shaking stopped. Katie believed Rex could fix anything. Ryan didn't argue. He kept Rex trained because the dog kept Katie safe. An older couple sat by the window. A trucker in a worn cap ate slow. The griddle hissed behind the counter. At the counter sat a young woman in navy camis. Name tape read Torres. She stared at her phone, then turned it face down. Her shoulders stayed tight, like she expected a hand to land there. When she lifted her mug, her fingers shook. A bruised yellow mark flashed on her wrist. Ryan noticed and looked away. He didn't want trouble. Katie kept watching. Dottie set a plate in front of Torres. "Eat, honey," she said softly. Torres tried. One bite, then nothing. The door jingled again, and the room changed. 3 men walked in together, boots heavy, voices sharp, work pants, tactical belts, black shirts with a local security logo Ryan had seen around town. The man in front had a shaved head and a grin that felt like a dare. The second was thin, with a snake tattoo crawling up his neck. The third was huge, shoulders filling the doorway. Rex lifted his head, ears forward, a low breath in his chest. Ryan felt it too. Men like this didn't need a reason. They needed an audience. Shaved Head spotted Torres and headed for her. "Well, look who's out in public," he said, loud enough for half the diner. Torres kept her eyes down. Her jaw tightened. Snake Tattoo laughed. "You gonna pretend you don't know us, Jenna?" The big one stopped behind her stool, close, blocking her back. Shaved Head leaned in and put his hand on her shoulder, squeezing like he owned the right. Dottie's smile went thin. "Fellas," she said, careful, "you ordering food?" Shaved Head didn't look at her. "We're talking." Torres tried to stand. Snake Tattoo nudged her phone across the counter with one finger. It slid away from her. Oops. A couple people looked down at their plates. Nobody wanted this fight in their morning. Katie's fork stopped midair. Her small hand slid under the table and found Rex's fur. Rex stayed still, but his muscles tightened. Ryan watched distance and angles the way he couldn't turn off. 3 men, 1 trapped sailor, exit blocked, hands near belts. Shaved Head tightened his grip. You keep running your mouth, he told Torres. You're gonna lose more than your phone. Torres's voice came out thin. Don't touch me. Shaved Head smiled wider. Make me. Silence spread across the diner. Ryan felt his pulse in his ears, a flash of hot sand, a taste of metal. Then Rex nudged Ryan's shin, warm and real, and the flash passed. Katie leaned close, whispering like a prayer. Daddy, please help her. Ryan set his coffee down without a sound. He stood. He didn't raise his voice. He walked to the counter like a man stepping into work he already understood. Rex rose and stayed at heel, leash loose in Ryan's hand. Ryan stopped a few feet away, hands open, calm face. Let her go, he said. Shaved Head looked him over, amused. This ain't your business. It is now. Snake Tattoo gave a short laugh. Who are you, man? Ryan kept his eyes on the hand on Torres's shoulder. Take it off. Shaved Head shoved Ryan in the chest. Hard. A test. Ryan's boots shifted half an inch and he stayed upright, balanced like he'd planned it. Torres saw that and went still. Shaved Head's grin faltered. Pride took over. He swung a wide right hand, a bar punch meant to drop a civilian. Ryan moved inside the arc, one step. His left hand redirected the arm. His right elbow drove into ribs with clean precision. The air left Shaved Head in a grunt. Ryan hooked a foot and put him on the tile, controlled, face turned away from the floor. Snake Tattoo lunged, reaching for Ryan's belt. Ryan caught his wrist, twisted, and dropped him against the counter edge with a short strike to the body. Snake Tattoo folded, wheezing, his hand trapped in Ryan's grip. The big one charged low. Rex surged half a step, teeth flashing. Stay, Ryan said. Rex froze, trembling with restraint. Ryan sprawled, caught the big man's head, and turned it with leverage instead of brute force. A knee pressed in. The huge man hit his knees, then the floor, breath gone. 10 seconds, maybe less. 3 men down, Ryan standing, no rage, just control. Rex at his side, eyes locked, ready but waiting. For a beat, nobody spoke. Then the trucker stood up, voice rough. They started it, he said. All of us saw. The older couple nodded. Dottie swallowed hard and pointed at Torres. She couldn't get away, she said. Torres slid off her stool, shaking. Ryan looked at her. You hurt? He asked. She swallowed. No, thank you. Ryan turned back toward the booth. Katie stared at him, wide-eyed. Captain the Rabbit pressed to her chest like armor. The bell over the door rang again. This time it sounded like a warning. Sheriff Dale Hargrove walked in, hat brim low, scanning the bodies on the floor. Then his eyes settled on Rex, cold and fixed, like he'd just found the lever he wanted. Then his eyes settled on Rex, cold and fixed, like he'd just found the lever he wanted. Sheriff Dale Hargrove didn't rush in to help. He didn't ask Jenna Torres if she was okay. He walked past the booths, boots loud on tile, and stopped where Ryan stood with Rex at his leg. Whose dog? Hargrove asked. Mine, Ryan said. Rex stayed glued to him, shoulder touching Ryan's knee, thick coat, quiet eyes that tracked every shift of weight in the room. He wasn't barking. Hargrove looked at the 3 men on the floor like they were clutter. Y'all breathe? He asked them, bored. Snake Tattoo groaned. The big man rolled to his side, pulling air in short bursts. Shaved Head tried to sit and failed. Dottie came out from behind the counter with a towel clenched in her hands. Her face was pale. Sheriff, they cornered that sailor, she said. They grabbed her sleeve, wouldn't let her leave. Hargrove didn't turn. Ma'am, you run pancakes. Let me run this. The diner went small and still. Forks stopped. Ryan felt his daughter behind him. Katie's fingers hooked his jacket. Captain the Rabbit was pressed to her chest. I'm here, Ryan said, without looking back. Jenna Torres stood by the counter with her phone in her hand. She held it like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her wrists showed yellowing bruises that didn't come from training. Her eyes were shiny, but steady. Hargrove saw the phone. Put that away. Torres swallowed. No, sir. I recorded it. Hargrove's mouth tightened. You don't record in my town like you're some investigator. I'm protecting myself, she said. Before Hargrove could answer, Deputy Ben Holt slipped in behind him, mid-30s, close-cropped hair, a face that looked worn out by choices he didn't get to make. He took one look at the bodies on the floor, then at Ryan, then at Rex. His eyes lingered on the dog like he already knew this was the pressure point. "I'll call EMS," Holt said. "No," Hargrove snapped. "They can walk it off." A trucker at the corner table stood up anyway. "Sheriff," he said. "They started it. We all saw." An older woman nodded hard. "He asked them to stop. They shoved him first." Hargrove let the room talk itself into a corner. Then he stepped closer to Ryan, close enough that Ryan could smell mint gum and stale coffee. "Ryan Mercer," Hargrove said. "Bay Road, 1 kid, 1 dog." Ryan's jaw set. He didn't like his child being inventoried. "We're leaving," Ryan said. Hargrove's eyes flicked to Rex again. "Leash law," he said. "Dangerous dog ordinance. Any animal involved in violence can be impounded for public safety." "He didn't touch anybody," Ryan said. Rex's ears tipped forward at the word impounded. His tail stayed still. He didn't move. He listened the way he listened to fireworks, body tight, waiting for the next blast. Hargrove smiled with no warmth. "We'll decide that." Torres lifted her phone higher. "I've got the whole thing," she said, "from the moment they walked in." Hargrove held out his hand. "Give it here." "No," Torres said. Dottie's voice shook. "Sheriff, she's got rights." Hargrove turned to Dottie for the first time. His eyes were flat as a pond with no fish. "Careful," he said. That one word carried years of fear. The bell over the door jingled again. Megan Hale came in from the parking lot, still in blue scrubs, jacket half-zipped, hair pulled back fast. She scanned the room and went straight to Torres. "You hurt?" Megan asked. Torres nodded once, then her chin trembled. "They keep doing this," she said. "No one stops it." Megan's eyes went to the bruises, then to Hargrove. "That's assault," Megan said. "She needs a report, a case number, and a safe ride." Hargrove kept his voice polite. "Miss Hale, go back to the ER. This is police business." "It's medical business when someone's harmed," Megan said, "and it's my business as a citizen." Holt cleared his throat. "Sheriff, witnesses are offering statements." Hargrove's head snapped toward Holt. "I know." Ryan touched Rex between the shoulders. Warm fur. Real. It kept the old noise in Ryan's head from rising. He could feel the seal part of him wanting to step forward. He kept it leashed, same as Rex. Hargrove raised his voice for the room. "All right, everyone calm down. We'll take statements." He pointed at Torres again. "Hand me your phone. Evidence." Megan stepped between them. "Not without documentation," she said. "Receipt, case number, and she keeps a copy." Hargrove stared at Megan, then at Ryan. "You're all getting brave today." Ryan didn't blink. "We're done." Hargrove's hand rested near his belt. "If you walk out, I'll call it obstruction. I'll call it resisting. I'll call animal control." Ryan looked at Holt. Holt's eyes were tight, apologetic. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Ryan turned slightly and put his body between Katie and the sheriff. "Katie," he said, "stay behind me." "Yes, Daddy," she whispered. Ryan walked for the door at a slow, steady pace. No sudden moves. Rex matched him, paws soft on the tile, head level, eyes forward. Torres stayed with Megan near the counter. Dottie watched like she might crumble. Hargrove spoke low, just for Ryan. "You think this ends in a diner?" Ryan kept moving. Outside, the wind off the water hit like a slap. Ryan's pickup sat under the live oak, the same parking spot every Saturday. The lot smelled like wet gravel and old fry grease. Ryan opened the passenger door and buckled Katie in. His hands didn't shake. He forced it quiet. Katie watched him like she was memorizing his face. Rex hopped into the back and sat, facing the diner, ears up, eyes locked. Megan guided Torres to her car. "I'll get you somewhere safe," Megan said. "Then we file the right way." Torres nodded, tears stuck in her lashes. Ryan started his engine. Hargrove stepped onto the diner's front step like he owned the street. He tipped his hat at Katie, all neighborly manners. Then he looked at Rex again, and Ryan felt the same cold as the tile inside. That night, Ryan checked every lock twice. He set a chair under the back knob. He hated that he knew how to turn a home into a temporary safe room. Katie slept with Captain under her chin. Rex lay beside her bed, nose aimed at the hallway, breathing slow so she could breathe slow too. Ryan sat at the dark kitchen table and listened to the house. He thought about how easy it would be to write a report that said Rex lunged. He thought about how Sheriff Hargrove talked like the law was his personal tool. Just after midnight, headlights washed across the living room wall. A vehicle slowed at the driveway, then rolled on. At dawn, Ryan opened the front door and found a plain white envelope on the mat. Inside was a typed notice with the county seal. At the bottom, someone had added a line in pen. "Tomorrow, I come for the dog." Ryan read the line twice, then folded the notice and slid it into his pocket. The porch boards were damp under his feet. The air smelled like wet pine and salt. Rex stood in the doorway behind him. German shepherd. Black saddle, tan legs, amber eyes that didn't miss much. His ears stayed forward, locked on the gravel drive, like he expected tires to crunch at any second. Ryan latched the door, deadbolt, chain. He looked down at Rex and rubbed the thick fur at his neck. "We're not running," he said. Katie padded into the hall in socks, hair a mess, Captain the Rabbit hanging from her hand. She saw the paper's edge in Ryan's pocket, and her face tightened. "Is Rex in trouble?" "No, baby," Ryan said, keeping his voice even. "Rex is fine." He cooked anyway. Eggs and toast. The skillet hissed. Coffee burned a little, like it always did when he poured too fast. Ryan ate standing up, back to the wall, eyes checking the windows like he hated the world for making him do it. Rex lay near Katie's chair, chin on paws, breathing slow so she'd breathe slow. Ryan's hands looked like a carpenter's until you noticed the straight scars across his knuckles and the faint burn mark at his wrist where a line once bit down. He hadn't talked about those years since Katie was in diapers. He'd tried to bury them under lumber and bedtime stories. Some nights he woke sitting upright, sweat cold on his neck, hearing a door slam that wasn't there. Rex would climb up, press his weight against Ryan's thigh, and breathe with him until the shaking eased. Katie called it Rex hugs. Ryan called it staying alive. This morning, with that notice in his pocket, he felt the old noise rising again right away. At 9, Megan Hale called. Her tone was clipped, tired. "Dottie told me about the notice." "How'd it spread that quick?" Ryan asked. "This town runs on coffee and fear," Megan said. "Torres is safe for the moment, not at her place. I'm getting her seen and documented." Ryan lowered his voice. "I don't want you in the middle." "I've been in the middle for years," Megan said. "I just kept my head down, not today." Ryan glanced at Rex. The dog leaned into his shin, steady pressure. "Holt?" Ryan asked. "Careful with him," Megan said. "He's not Hargrove, but he answers to him. Lock your doors." When the call ended, Ryan tried to do normal. He fixed a loose hinge for a neighbor, swept his porch, kept his hands busy because stillness let the past creep in. By mid-morning, Rex stood and sniffed the air, then stared at the drive. Engines. Not one. Several. Ryan's shoulders tightened before he could stop it. He set his tools down and stepped onto the porch with his hands visible. Rex sat behind his left leg, leash loose, body still as stone. 3 black SUVs rolled onto the gravel and stopped in a clean half-circle. Doors opened in order. 2 military police stepped out first. No rifles raised, no smiles. Their eyes swept the property. A Navy officer in dress blues followed, crisp and formal, like the morning wasn't real. Then the 3rd SUV door opened, and Rear Admiral Thomas Keene stepped out. Keene moved with the quiet confidence of command. Late 50s, broad shoulders, a face weathered by sun and long decisions. He walked to the bottom step and stopped. "Ryan Mercer," Keene said. Ryan didn't flinch. "That's me." Keene's eyes flicked once toward the window, where Katie's face hovered behind the curtain, then down to Rex. "Good dog," he said. Rex didn't move. He watched Keene's hands. Keene held out a folder. "I'm not here for your dog. I'm here because yesterday you made a problem public." Ryan didn't take it. "If this is about the diner, talk to the sheriff." Keene's mouth tightened. "I'd rather not." He pulled out a tablet and played the diner footage. Ryan saw himself step in, saw the shove, saw the 10 seconds, saw Rex in the corner of the frame, tense and obedient. Keene paused on Ryan's footwork. "Controlled force," he said. No rage, no broken bones. That's not civilian training. Ryan's beard hid the tension in his jaw, but not the hardness in his eyes. You've got the wrong man. Keene slid out a photo from the folder. Younger Ryan, high and tight haircut, trident on his chest, desert light in his eyes. Ryan's throat tightened. He could taste dust that wasn't there. I'm retired, he said. Retired isn't erased, Keene replied. His voice stayed calm. I'm not here to drag you back. From inside, Katie's voice carried through the screen door. Daddy? Ryan turned his head a fraction. Stay inside, he said, gentle, final. Yes, Daddy? Keene lowered his voice. Petty Officer Jenna Torres isn't just being hassled. She's been trying to report missing gear, night vision, radios, items tied to Navy contracts. Ryan's stomach went cold. Seabrook's private port sat close enough to smell on windy days. The sheriff's friends controlled it. Keene kept going. Torres touched a shipment list. It points to Seabrook. It points to a contractor. It points to Sheriff Hargrove. Ryan stared out at Katie's swing set, sun-bleached and still. Then arrest him. We're building a clean case, Keene said. Clean takes time. Your sheriff doesn't give people time. Ryan felt the envelope in his pocket like a weight. Tomorrow, the dog, a lever. Keene nodded at Rex. They'll use him to move you. Ryan's voice stayed low. What do you want? One job, Keene said. Get Torres and her evidence into federal hands. Quiet, fast, no bodies. The old part of Ryan knew how to do quiet. The father part knew the price. No, Ryan said. Keene didn't argue. He just watched Ryan like he was reading a map. You have 72 hours before this turns into a disappearance, he said. That's not drama, that's math. He slid a card onto the porch step, waited with a coin. My number, he said. If you change your mind. Ryan didn't pick it up. Keene turned back toward the SUVs. The MPs followed. Engines started. Dust lifted and drifted through the pines. Ryan stayed on the porch until the last taillight vanished. That night, he checked on Katie twice. Rex lay in the hallway outside her door, body angled toward the living room, ears twitching at every creak. Ryan sat at the kitchen table with the sheriff's notice and the admiral's card in front of him, trying to decide what kind of man he could afford to be. A sharp crack snapped from the back of the house. Glass. Rex surged first, nails skittering on wood. Ryan followed barefoot, silent, heart hammering. The kitchen window over the sink had a spiderweb hole. Cold air spilled in. On the floor lay a dark canvas bag, wet from dew, zipper half open. Inside, Ryan saw metal and plastic and a serial number he recognized too well. ET was stamped clean, like it had never been meant for civilian hands. He didn't touch it right away. He just stared, listening for footsteps outside. Rex stood over the bag, chest low, nose working. His lip lifted a fraction, just a warning he saved for real trouble. Ryan grabbed a dish towel and used it to zip the bag shut. He carried it to the table and set it down like it was a live wire. Katie's bedroom door creaked. Daddy, she called, small and sleepy. Ryan stepped into the hall fast, voice soft. Stay in bed, kiddo. Bad dream, that's all. Rex patted after him, shoulder brushing Ryan's leg, a steadying weight. Ryan felt his own pulse jump in his throat, the old familiar surge that came before things turned violent. He forced air in through his nose and out slow. His left forearm still held a rope burn that never faded. He checked the back door, locked, chain on. The window frame was jagged with glass. Whoever did it wasn't trying to sneak. They were sending a message. Ryan pulled his phone, thumb hovering over Megan's number, then stopping. If he called her, he dragged her deeper. If he didn't, he left her blind. He texted one line instead. Window hit. Don't come alone. Keep Torres hidden. He hadn't hit send yet when headlights swept the yard. 3 vehicles, not military this time. County units. The crunch of gravel came fast. Rex's ears snapped forward. He let out one low, vibrating bark. Quiet, Ryan said. Rex held, but his body stayed coiled. Ryan opened the front door before they could knock, as Sheriff Hargrove stood at the bottom step with Deputy Holt beside him. 2 more deputies fanned out, hands near their belts. An animal control truck idled behind them. Hargrove smiled. "Evening, Ryan." "It's morning," Ryan said. His voice sounded calm, but his shoulders were tight. Hargrove's eyes flicked past him, searching the house. "We had a report," he said. "Possible break-in, possible weapons." Holt's gaze met Ryan's for a half second. It said, "I'm sorry." It also said, "Don't give him a reason." Ryan held still. "Someone threw something through my kitchen window." "Shame," Hargrove said. "Mind if we take a look?" "You got a warrant?" Ryan asked. Hargrove lifted a folded paper from his pocket. "Sure do." He held it like a receipt. "Judge signed it an hour ago." Ryan took it, read the top line, and felt his stomach drop. Search for stolen government property. Not possible, not unknown. Specific words, already decided. Katie's door opened behind him. "Daddy?" she whispered again, louder now. Ryan turned his head. "Back to bed," he said. "Now." Katie froze, eyes wide, Captain clutched to her chest. Rex moved between her and the doorway without being told, his body a living wall. Hargrove stepped up onto the porch. "There she is," he said, like he was greeting her. "Morning, sweetheart." Katie didn't answer. "Sheriff," Ryan said, warning in his tone. Hargrove's smile didn't change. "Let's keep this polite," he said. "We're just doing a job." They walked in, boots on hardwood, flashlights cutting through corners that didn't need light. Hargrove headed straight toward the kitchen like he already knew the layout. Ryan followed, trying to stay in front of Katie's line of sight. Hargrove stopped at the shattered window, whistled low. "Nasty." Then one deputy pointed. "Bag's right there, Sheriff." Ryan's jaw clenched. The bag sat on the table where he'd placed it. Hargrove opened it with 2 fingers, careful, like he didn't want prints. He pulled out a compact piece of gear, black polymer and metal, serial number shining under the light. "Well, well," Hargrove said. "Looks like someone's got himself some Navy toys." "That was thrown in here," Ryan said. "I didn't buy it. I didn't steal it." Hargrove turned to Holt. "You hearing this?" he asked, like it was funny. Holt's face was stiff. "We'll document everything," he said, and his voice sounded like sandpaper. Ryan looked at Holt. "You know me." Holt swallowed. "I know what the warrant says." Hargrove snapped his fingers. "Animal control," he called. "We've got a dangerous dog on scene." Rex's head lifted. His eyes went to Ryan, then back to Hargrove. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He stood, still and solid, but every hair along his shoulders rose. "No," Ryan said. "He hasn't done anything." Hargrove leaned close. He smelled like gum and power. "Your dog was present during an assault yesterday," he said. "Now we've got stolen property in your kitchen. Public safety says we take him." Katie made a small sound, like she was trying not to cry. "Rex," she whispered. Rex turned his head toward her, ears softening for a beat, then back to the men. Ryan stepped between them. "He stays." A deputy reached for Rex's collar. Rex held still, but his gaze hardened, and the deputy hesitated. Hargrove's tone sharpened. "Touching an officer's hand is all I need," he said. "Don't make me do this the hard way." Ryan felt heat rise behind his eyes. He forced it down. "Katie," he said, "go to your room." "She won't," Hargrove said. "Not until she sees how this works." Megan's car skidded into the drive then, tires on gravel. She jumped out in scrubs and a jacket, hair pulled back, face set. "Dale!" she called. "Stop!" Hargrove turned, eyebrows lifted. "Miss Hale, always right on time." Megan moved straight to Katie, crouched, hands gentle. "Hey, honey," she said. "Come with me. We'll have cocoa, okay?" Katie's eyes searched Ryan's face. He nodded once. "Go," he said. Katie ran to Megan and grabbed her hand like it was a rope out of deep water. Rex tried to follow, one step, then stopped when Ryan said, "Stay." It cost him. You could see it in the way his shoulders quivered. Animal control slipped a catchpole over Rex's neck. Rex didn't fight. He looked at Ryan the whole time, eyes wide and wet, like he couldn't understand why his anchor wasn't reaching for him. "I'll get him back," Ryan said, more to himself than anyone. Hargrove clicked cuffs around Ryan's wrists, cold metal, too tight. "You're under arrest for possession of stolen government property," he he said. And obstruction, if you keep talking. Ryan didn't resist. He just watched Katie disappear into Megan's car, Captain the Rabbit pressed to her cheek. He watched Rex loaded into a crate, nails scraping the truck bed once, then going silent. At the station, fluorescent lights buzzed like angry insects. They took Ryan's belt and boots. They sat him in an interview room that smelled like bleach and old sweat. A camera stared down from the corner. Hargrove came in alone, set a folder on the table, and smiled. "Off the record," he said, and reached up. He turned the camera off. Then he slid a pen across the table. "You sign this confession," he said softly, "and your little girl goes home tonight. You don't. And that dog gets put down before dawn." Ryan Mercer didn't reach for the pen. His wrists ached in the cuffs, skin pinched raw. The room smelled like bleach and old coffee. The fluorescent light hummed overhead. Sheriff Dale Hargrove sat back like he had all day. Ryan kept his voice flat. "Where's my daughter?" "With a nice nurse who thinks she can save the world," Hargrove said. "Your dog's in county hold. You sign, it all goes away." Ryan stared at the paper. A full confession, a neat story. He could hear Rex's nails in his mind, clicking on tile, then stopping. He forced himself to breathe slow, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Rex had taught him that rhythm in a way. Hargrove leaned forward. "You're a strong man, Ryan, but you're alone." The door opened and Deputy Ben Holt stepped in, carrying a folder. Holt's face looked gray under the lights. He didn't meet Hargrove's eyes. "Sheriff," he said, "we got a call. Disturbance over on Dock Street. Your guys want you." Hargrove didn't move. "It can wait." Holt shifted his weight. "It's on camera. Big crowd. If you don't show, it'll get loud." Hargrove's jaw tightened. He stood and pointed at Ryan. "Don't get cute," he said. "I'll be right back." He left. The door shut. The buzzing light filled the silence. Holt stayed, hands on the folder, eyes finally lifting to Ryan's. "You didn't bring that gear in?" Holt said, low. Ryan's stare didn't soften. "Then why am I here?" Holt swallowed. "Because you made him look small at Dottie's, and because Torres has something he wants buried." "Where is she?" Ryan asked. Holt shook his head once. "Gone. Her phone went dark. Her room was cleaned out like she never existed." Ryan felt cold spread through his chest. "Megan?" "She's trying," Holt said. "She's got your girl. She's got Dottie, the trucker, those old folks. She's putting names on paper. She called a lawyer in Wilmington. She's building a wall with the town." Ryan exhaled through his nose. "Walls don't stop a man like Hargrove." Holt's fingers tapped the folder. "No, but time might." He slid a small key across the table, just out of the camera's view. "Bathroom break," he murmured. "When I open your cuffs, don't make me regret it." Ryan looked at the key, then at Holt's tired face. "Why?" he asked. Holt's mouth twitched like it hurt. "Because my kid eats pancakes at Dottie's, too." Holt clicked the cuffs loose and stood, loud enough for the hallway. "Stand up," he said. "Hands behind your back." Ryan stood, his shoulders rolled once, testing freedom. He moved like a man who'd spent years learning not to waste motion. In the hallway, Holt walked him past the front desk. Two deputies watched TV with the volume up. Ryan caught the scent of gun oil and cheap cologne. He kept his eyes down. Holt pushed him into the bathroom. 2 minutes, Holt said through the door. "Then I come back and cuff you again." Ryan waited. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then he used the key. The window was high, but the hinge was old. He lifted, pressed, and slid through into wet air and darkness. Outside, rain misted the parking lot. Ryan moved along the fence line, feet quiet. His beard caught cold drops. He tasted salt on the wind. The old training woke up without permission. He didn't run to his house. He ran to the one place Rex would be before dawn. County Animal Control sat behind the station, a low cinder-block building with a yard of cages. A pickup idled near the back gate. Megan Hale stepped out, hood up, face set hard. Dottie stood beside her in a raincoat, gripping an umbrella like a weapon. The trucker was there too, big shoulders, jaw clenched. They all froze when they saw Ryan. "Get it," Megan rushed in, whispering fierce. "Katie's safe. She's at my sister's. Don't you dare go home. Ryan nodded. Rex? Megan pointed. Inside. They moved him an hour ago. They're calling him aggressive. They're setting you up. Dottie's eyes shone. I called everybody I trust, she said. People who were quiet too long. The trucker lifted his phone. We got witnesses. We got timestamps. We got the diner video backed up. Ryan's voice stayed low. We need more than video. Megan pulled a small flash drive from her pocket. Torres left this at the ER, she said. She told me, if I disappear, the dog has the rest. Ryan's stomach tightened. The dog has what? Megan looked at Rex's crate through the wet chain-link fence. Something in his collar. Ryan moved. One cut of the bolt cutter the trucker brought, and the back gate gave. The yard smelled like wet dog, bleach, and fear. Rex barked once from inside, a deep relieved sound. Ryan heard it like a hand on his shoulder. A young animal control tech stepped out, wide-eyed, flashlight shaking. Ryan raised one hand. We're taking our dog, he said. Nobody gets hurt. The tech saw Ryan's face, the scar at his jaw, the calm eyes, and he didn't argue. He stepped aside and pointed. Last kennel, he whispered. Rex stood when Ryan reached him. Big frame, coat damp. Eyes bright, brown gold. Locked on Ryan like he'd been counting seconds. His tail thumped once, then stopped, staying disciplined even now. Ryan opened the latch. Rex pressed into him, head under Ryan's palm. Ryan felt the tremor in the dog's ribs. Good boy, Ryan breathed. Stay with me. Megan knelt and checked Rex's neck. The collar was thick leather with a stitched nameplate. She ran her fingers under the edge and found a hidden seam. Here, she said. Ryan slid a fingernail in and peeled back the flap, a tiny slot. Inside sat a micro SD card wrapped in plastic. Dottie sucked in air. Oh, Lord! The trucker whispered. That's it. That's the whole damn thing. Ryan pocketed it. His fingers brushed Rex's fur again, warm and rain-soaked, and for a second the shaking in his chest finally eased there too. His skin prickled. He could feel the town shifting, like a door opening. Then sirens lit the night. Blue and red bounced off wet cages. A radio barked from the road. Suspect is armed, dangerous dog on scene, do not engage alone. Rex's ears snapped up. Megan grabbed Ryan's sleeve. They're here, she hissed. Ryan looked toward the gate. Patrol lights flooded the yard. Footsteps hit gravel, and Hargrove's voice carried through a loudspeaker, smooth as oil. Ryan Mercer, step out where I can see you. The loudspeaker crackled, then went quiet. Rain misted the animal control yard. Blue lights washed the chain-link fence. Ryan stood behind the kennel building with Megan, Dottie, and the trucker. Rex pressed against Ryan's thigh, soaked coat dark, amber eyes steady. His ears stayed forward, tracking every bootstep outside the gate. Megan whispered, They're calling you armed. I'm not, Ryan said. That won't matter, Dottie breathed. Her hands shook around the bolt cutters. Ryan's beard was wet at the edges. The scar on his jaw felt tight in the cold. He could feel the old part of his brain pushing him toward violence as an answer. He kept it leashed, same as Rex. He pulled the micro SD from his pocket and pressed it into Megan's palm. If they take me, you run, he said. Get this to someone outside Seabrook. Megan's eyes flashed. I'm not leaving you. You're leaving with my kid, Ryan said. That's the deal. From the road, Hargrove called again, smooth as oil. Walk out, hands up, dog stays put. Rex rumbled low, then settled when Ryan touched his collar. The dog looked at Ryan like he was waiting for a single clear word. Footsteps moved along the fence line. Someone was trying to flank. Ryan leaned to the trucker. Back gate now, he whispered. The trucker nodded and slipped away. Outside, Holt's voice carried. Sheriff, we've got civilians in there. Slow down. Hargrove snapped, then get them out. A moment later, the back gate latch clicked. The trucker waved once from the shadows. Ryan pointed. Megan, take Rex. Go. Rex started toward Ryan, then stopped when Ryan said, Protect. His eyes softened for a beat. Then he pivoted to Megan, shoulder brushing her leg, guiding her the way he guided Katie during storms. Dottie grabbed Megan's sleeve. Move, she whispered. voice breaking. They slipped out through the back, rain swallowing them. Ryan stepped into the open yard, hands lifted, palms out. No weapon, no sudden moves, just a tired man in a wet jacket. Sheriff Dale Hargrove stood by his cruiser, hat brim low, spotlight cutting a hard circle around Ryan. Deputies fanned out with hands on holsters. Holt stood a half step behind, face tight. "Good," Hargrove called. "Now come closer." Ryan walked 3 slow steps and stopped. "My daughter's not here," he said. "Don't talk like she is." Hargrove smiled thin. "Where's the dog?" "Safe," Ryan said. "That dog's evidence," Hargrove replied. "And you're a flight risk." He nodded. "Cuff him." A deputy approached. Ryan held still. Cold metal closed around his wrists. Another set of headlights swept the road. 2 black SUVs rolled in and stopped. Rear Admiral Thomas Keene stepped out, rain beating on his coat. 2 men followed in plain clothes, eyes sharp, badges ready. "Sheriff Hargrove," Keene said, calm. Hargrove turned, irritation flashing. "Admiral, local matter." Keene looked at the bag gear on a cruiser hood. "Stolen military property isn't local," he said, "and Petty Officer Jenna Torres is missing." Only one plainclothes man stepped forward. "NCIS," he said. "We're taking custody of the evidence and Mr. Mercer as a material witness." Hargrove's voice sharpened. "He assaulted my contractors. He broke custody. He stole the dog." Ryan stared straight ahead, refusing to feed it. Keene looked at Holt. "Remove the cuffs." Holt hesitated, then unlocked Ryan with hands that shook. Hargrove took a step. "Ben." Holt didn't look at him. "Yes, sir," he said, and it sounded hollow. Keene's team moved Ryan to the SUV, not rough, professional. Keene leaned close as the door opened. 72 hours, he said. "That's a clock." "My daughter stays out," Ryan said. "She will," Keene replied, "if we move." They drove to an empty VFW hall at the edge of town. Old wood, floor wax, folding chairs, a single desk lamp on a table. Keene laid the micro SD under the lamp. "Torres hid this in your dog's collar," he said. "She knew she'd be grabbed." Ryan's fists clenched. "Where is she?" "Seabrook Private Port," Keene said. "Back office, containers, contractor security, and your sheriff." One NCIS agent shook his head. "A full raid needs daylight and paper." Keene kept his eyes on Ryan. "By daylight, she's gone." Keene slid a printed map across the table. Red circles mark cameras, gates, and a small office on the far end of the pier. "Hargrove calls it private security," he said. "It's a contractor outfit with ex-cops and hungry kids. They'll move Torres onto a boat once the tide turns. After that, she's not a witness. She's cargo." Ryan stared at the map until the lines blurred. In his head, he heard Katie's whisper in the diner. He heard Rex's nails on tile. He felt the old burn of adrenaline in his throat. He forced his shoulders down, then took one slow breath, copying Rex. In, hold, out. The room stopped spinning. Megan stepped in close, voice low. "Dottie shut the diner," she told Keene. "She's got people coming in through the back, one at a time. Phones, videos, names. The church deacon is keeping a list. If Hargrove tries to rewrite yesterday, the town's ready to say no." Keene nodded like that mattered. "Good," he said. "Noise in town pulls deputies away from the port. We go in quiet. And when this is done, you go home to your girl." Ryan swallowed hard. "I'm not going back to war." "This isn't war," Keene said. "It's extraction. Quiet. No bodies." Ryan stared at the table, then up. "Rex stays with Megan," he said. "Katie stays with Megan. If I don't come home, you make sure they're not alone." Keene nodded once. "Agreed." Megan arrived before midnight, face pale, hair damp. Rex was with her, coat brushed rough, eyes searching for Ryan the second he stepped in. His tail thumped once, then he sat, trying to hold it together. Ryan knelt and pressed his forehead to Rex's. "Stay with them," he whispered. "That's your job." Rex licked Ryan's beard once, slow, then leaned into Megan's leg like he understood. Near midnight, Keene drove Ryan and one NCIS agent toward the port. They parked a block away and walked along the seawall. The air smelled like seaweed, fuel, and rust. Waves slapped pilings under the dock. Ryan slid under the pier, water dripping onto his neck. Boards above him creaked with every step overhead. He heard a woman's breath, fast and forced, a muffled sob. Then a familiar voice cut through the dark, close enough to touch. "Move her," Sheriff Hargrove said, "and if Mercer shows, I want him alive." Ryan lay under the pier while brackish water dripped onto his neck. The air stank of diesel and salt. Above him, boots crossed wet planks. A door creaked. A woman's breath hitched, then steadied. Keen's voice came through the earpiece. "Hold, we've got eyes on the office." Ryan slid forward on his elbows, slow and quiet. His beard brushed slimy wood. His wrists still burned where the cuffs had bitten. He kept his mind on one thing. Get her out. Get home. A gap in the boards gave him a slice of the back office. Yellow light, a metal desk, Jenna Torres in a chair, wrists zip-tied, bare feet on the floor. One cheek was swollen. A contractor guard stood behind her, hand on her shoulder. Sheriff Dale Hargrove stood in front of her like a man making a deal at a bank. "You're gonna tell me where the rest is," Hargrove said. "Who you talked to?" Torres swallowed. "I filed a report." Hargrove's laugh was soft. "Reports disappear." Ryan felt heat rise behind his eyes. He forced it down. He pictured Katie in her socks at the kitchen table. He breathed slow, like Rex had taught him. Keen whispered, "We move on your mark." Ryan watched the guard's pattern. 2 steps to the window, 2 steps back. He watched Hargrove's hands, phone on the desk, keys beside it, no gun out. He didn't need one, not in his town. "Now," Ryan said. A muffled pop. The lights died. The pier went black. Wind rushed in where the hum had been. Someone cursed. "Flashlights!" Ryan climbed through and hit the gravel under the office window, moving low. The NCIS agent ghosted behind him. Keen stayed outside the choke point, keeping the gate covered. A flashlight beam swept the dock. Ryan pressed to a cold container wall until it passed. Rain ticked on steel like small fingers. The office door cracked open. The guard stepped out with a light up. Ryan caught the wrist, turned it, and guided the man down. No head slam, no broken bones. The guard's knees hit wood. Ryan took the flashlight and clicked it off. Inside, Torres gasped. "Mercer?" "Quiet," Ryan said. Hargrove's silhouette shifted near the desk. "I knew you'd come," he said, calm and pleased. "You can't help yourself." Ryan stepped in. The NCIS agent moved left. Ryan cut Torres's ties with a small blade and put his body between her and Hargrove. Hargrove lifted his phone. "Deputies inbound," he said. "You're trespassing. You're done." The NCIS agent flashed his badge inches from Hargrove's face. "Federal custody," he said. "Drop the phone." Hargrove sneered. "Not in my county." He reached for the desk drawer. Ryan pinned his forearm to the desk with controlled weight. "Don't," Ryan said. Metal clicked. The NCIS agent cuffed Hargrove fast. Hargrove's breathing changed. He wasn't used to losing. Keen's voice snapped in. "They're at the gate! Move!" Ryan grabbed Torres by the elbow. She stumbled once, then found her legs. They ran down slick boards, wind slapping their faces, waves hammering below. Flashlights flared at the gate. Deputies tightened up. Holt was there, soaked, eyes wide. Hargrove shouted behind them, "Shoot the dog, man!" Nobody fired. 2 NCIS agents stepped into the open, rifles low but ready. "Stand down," one called. "Federal operation." Deputies hesitated. Holt looked from the badges to Hargrove in cuffs. His mouth opened, then closed. Keen met his gaze. "Your choice," Keen said. Holt lifted his hands. "Back up," he ordered. "All of you, back up." It wasn't loud. It was enough. They loaded Torres into the SUV. Ryan climbed in beside her. Hargrove fought, yelling about permits and private property. Keen didn't argue. He filmed. He logged times. He kept it clean. At the VFW hall, Megan waited with a laptop and a pot of coffee that smelled scorched and familiar. Rex lay at her feet. When Ryan walked in, Rex stood and pressed his head into Ryan's thigh like he was checking he was real. Ryan knelt and held the dog's neck. "Good boy," he whispered. Megan wrapped Torres in a blanket and sat her under the lamp. Dottie stood behind them, chin up, hands clasped. The trucker stayed at the door like a guard dog in a ball cap. Keene set the micro SD on the table. "Copy it," he told Megan. Megan did. Files opened. Videos from the port, shipment lists, calls, a ledger photo with Hargrove's signature. The room went quiet in a new way. Not fear, proof. Keene made the calls. "We've got probable cause," he said. "We've got a living witness." Before sunrise, federal vehicles rolled into Seabrook. Not a parade, a process. Agents hit the port, the sheriff's office, the contractor yard. Phones were seized, doors opened. Men who felt untouchable got handcuffed in front of their own crews. Dottie taped a sign at her register. Witnesses, one at a time. People came in, mechanics, old couples, a church deacon, a bait shop clerk. They wrote statements with shaking hands, then steadier hands. Holt walked in mid-morning, hat in his hands. He looked at Dottie, then Megan, then Ryan. "I'm done," he said. "I'll testify." Megan pointed to a chair. "Sit, right." Ryan didn't watch the news. He drove to Megan's sister's house. Katie burst through the screen door and slammed into him, laughing and crying at the same time. She smelled like shampoo and pancake syrup. Captain the Rabbit was under her arm. "Rex!" she cried. Rex trotted up and Katie hugged his neck. Rex leaned into her careful and gentle, then looked up at Ryan like he'd completed his mission. Ryan sat on the porch step with Katie tucked against his side. The breeze was cool. For the first time in days, his hands stopped trembling. 2 days later, Seabrook felt different. People looked up when they walked. They said hello without checking over their shoulders. On weeknights, Ryan lit the porch lamp and let the radio play low. He watered the small garden Katie started. Rex circled the yard once, then rested, finally trusting the dark again too. Saturday came. At 8:15, Ryan's faded blue pickup rolled into Dottie's lot and parked under the oak. The bell jingled. The diner smelled like bacon, syrup, and burnt coffee. Dottie poured Ryan's mug without asking. Katie climbed into the booth and grinned. "Chocolate chip pancakes." Ryan's eyes softened. "It's Saturday," he said. "That's the rule." Rex slid under the table, warm and solid, and let out a slow breath that matched Ryan's.